Welcome everybody back to Veil of Sound. And no, you are not having like an epiphany as if you have already seen this. You already did, because when this comes out, March 2nd, basically to the day, 2 years ago, I first had the pleasure of giving you an interview with this young man here, Cameron Moretti from the Infinity Ring. And now he's back, they're back with a new record, so we have to sit down and talk. So Cameron, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. Big fan.
Thank you very much.
I love our conversation, always.
I looked it up, and if we hadn't had a leap year in 2024, it would be the exact same day, because our first interview was on March the 3rd, when we published it, March the 3rd, 2023.
That's incredible. That's some
You go on first.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's serendipitous for sure. It's amazing.
In a way, right? In a way. A lot has happened for the Infinity Ring in those 2 years. We'll talk about the new record, but there is also the fact that I know we talked about it, and you said that Roadburn would be like a dream come true. Now, you have played Roadburn last year, and was it the dream come true that you wanted?
It was fantastic. Yeah, truly honored, and enormous fans of the festival, the curation. It was a fantastic situation. Being asked by Becky Walter to perform, we'd love to go back. The groups that performed were incredible. Truly, the staff, everything. It was such a great experience, and just feel grateful to be considered and had performed. It was great.
But you yourself are not coming back as an individual in 2025, aren't you?
Not in 25. Not in 20.
Yeah, it's always, I know for a lot of Americans, it's always a difficult question. Although I've also heard that a lot of Americans are planning on coming and staying because of certain political situations. But let's not get into
there's an opportunity. Sure, there's an opportunity. I believe we will be back that way closer to the end of this year as a group, not necessarily Roadburn affiliated, but the festival this year looks great, and kudos to their whole team. It looks awesome.
Yeah, for transparency, today we are recording on January 30th, and a few hours ago, I finally got the confirmation that my friend Toby Driver is playing. So I'm very, very much looking forward to that.
Yeah, Toby's a really nice guy. He's he lives close to where I am. We actually we played a festival together early fall of last year, actually in Portland, Oregon, or about an hour west maybe of Portland. It was called Luna Cascadia, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. His group Blood Mist had played and performed with Toby before. So it was great to see him there. It was awesome.
Yeah. And it's also awesome to see that not only he himself is going to play a set of his own stuff, but he's also going to perform some Allura Crucible stuff, which I'm really looking forward to.
Awesome.
Cameron, you know what I always ask? Any kind of band, merch, shirt, album, record that you would like to promote at this very moment, apart from your own, of course. I'll give you a moment to think while I pluck. And I looked it up. In our last interview, I wore a shirt by Unruh, if I saw it correctly. This time, I'm wearing a shirt that I bought at the same gig, Cologne's finest, Ulfa, the best black metal group ever to come out of my hometown. Have you got anything that you would like to pluck right now?
I'll just give a shout out to some of my friends out here. They're all working on some new material. They should have some stuff out hopefully this year. New Compound Bunker, which is some great noise from the Providence area. Jal, which is kind of some ambient noise, kind of goes a bunch of different directions. Rot Gut God, I believe that material will be out at some point. this year. And my great friend Jack M. Booth should have some material out also this year. So shout out those groups.
And before I get into the rabbit hole looking up those acts, we first have to talk about your new record. And first of all, I have to ask, how much do you like ancient Greece? Because the first record had the title Nemesis and Nativity, and now it's Ataraxia. Why not something more modern like Zeitgeist, Doppelganger, Waldsterben?
No, it's a valid question. So to be fair, I struggled with the album name for a little bit. Some of this material was recorded pretty hastily after actually the Nemesis recordings. A lot of them were ideas that had been circulating within myself, but also had toyed around with them with the group, kind of more these full iterations of them. So, elevator pitch of more or less what happened is this recording process was a little more drawn out. I'd say I learned a lot. I don't think I would go this route again, but extremely pleased with the outcome. Ataraxia was actually something, and I wish I could accredit what book it was from, but I want to say it was a Borges novel. Maybe it was in Labyrinths. But the word kind of on the page kind of popped out to me. Sometimes, like, I will take notes of, I do enjoy reading a lot of history, and this word popped out. I was also not familiar with its meaning immediately. And
for everybody who doesn't know, the meaning is the state of tranquility and calm.
Yeah, and it felt very appropriate, although, the album may not, there's some orchestral larger moments. There's some like really cathartic moments. The process of more or less finishing it and getting it to a place, it more or less felt like the word jumped off the page at me. Toying with it, it went into my small list, which was only 2 other titles, which at this moment I don't even recall necessarily what they were. And that's where we landed with it. So very, very pleased with it. Very beautiful word. Just very happy overall that it kind of found me instead of that endless search of trying to seek it out or something.
Yeah, it's also a word that I think I've already heard numerous times in connection with music. I know, before I say something wrong, but I'm very sure that there is an album by John Frusciante, which is also called Ataraxia, and I've heard it numerous times in connection with music for various reasons. I think this meaning behind it, tranquility and calm, I think that is something that seems to attract several musicians. So I can see why you took that. I can also see that there is a certain relation to the music. And that is something which surprised me because on the one hand, one could say that you are doing something it sounds very natural. So the progression between Nemesis and Tranquility, Nemesis and Nativity and Ataraxia sounds very natural, very clear. Right. The record to me is a little calmer than the first one, with other means. We'll come to that. But there is one thing, and that is something that I would like to ask you. The record sounds as if you as a performer, especially as a singer, have found your position even more than you already had on Nemesis and Nemesis and Nativity.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I think maybe, and it's hard to be biased, but the difference maybe of the two. First, I appreciate you saying that, is maybe that a lot of, I recall mentioning in the first interview, a lot of material starts with myself kind of the guitar, just kind of like ironing out either words come first and I find some chordal overtones that internally feel like they match it, or the latter, which is more or less like I find some tones and words kind of come after. But that being said, a lot of the material on Ataraxia is a lot of it was, I guess, ironed out songs that started more or less with just me with a guitar. Like a lot of it was just guitar, and then I saw the words kind of just came at me. Honestly, easier than they have sometimes in the past. It's really hard to find like a rhyme or reason to my process with it. I will say like the group helped elevate these things to like larger scales, but some of these songs are songs I feel I could sit and do like a almost solo performance of with just them and feel confident in the material. It's a lot of how they were constructed.
We will talk about that process a little bit more in detail. Just for everybody, I did my homework right now. I looked it up. Ataraxia is a song title, for example, a song by King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, for Team Sleep, for Klaus Doldinger's Passport, Pelican. I've nearly forgotten that one. So it's a record, not it's a song title that comes up frequently, and I think there is also something very important about it.
Shout out Pelican. Trevor's
yes,
good friend. Yeah, good friend.
Yeah, that would. By the way, if anybody from the Pelican group is listening to this one, give me a call. I've tried the same one with Blixa Bargeld when Cameron and I did the first one. It didn't work, but maybe with Pelican, I don't know.
Word. Yeah. Keep trying.
Yes, it would be cool.
Yeah.
What I recognized about the new record, when we talked about the first one, about Nemesis and Nativity, I said, and I still stick to that the record had a certain medieval feel. We also talked about the Schellenbaum and other stuff like that. The new record sounds a little bit like a jump ahead in time. Not necessarily to a 20th or 21st century, but it sounds like a very Baroque record. It's very rich in sound. Is that something that you were very consciously aiming for?
I would say so. Yeah, in short, enormous fan of like early Leonard Cohen material, even to some of his later stuff, like You Want It Darker and stuff like that. I think when the early stages of these songs were getting ironed out, to speak back to the moment I was saying about writing them, I knew that they were going to be a little more narrative or something, if that makes sense.
It does.
That was really my only like process I kind of had in line is, a lot of them were effortlessly. Actually, I retract that. Actually, the early stages of them were effortlessly kind of developing, and I knew would need to bring this stuff to the group and figure out what parts to elevate, where to become expansive or to retract and become smaller. But yeah, I would say that idea was there kind of from the jump, a little bit of more narrative based. And I think you said Baroque, but I could see that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, it's also because I've already said that about the first one, that the first one already had a certain kind of ecclesiastical feel. The cover was a church. The sound was very rich and opulent. And now I have a feeling as if it's, again, a little bit more opulence. And I can see that narrative part as well. You've spoken about the band. Am I correct, and did I see it correctly, that you have a new band member?
Yes, Francesca had joined the group. She's been with us almost 2 years now.
Hmm.
Oddly enough, we officially met at our album release performance for Nemesis. She was playing with a friends group that I mentioned, Rock Got God. Um, they both live by coastal, and yeah, Francesca and I got pretty close pretty quick, and we had a West Coast tour booked, and she just kind of hopped in, rolled with us energetically as well as like musically. We were very aligned really quickly. Um, and that was really great. I'll jump ahead to make a note that I said the process of ataraxia was fairly longer, and I
Hmm.
attribute a lot of the maybe pushing over the finish line idea, because we stepped away from this album for a while. We kind of did like 60% of it
Hmm.
and put it on a back burner mentally, and like we're performing, we went to Europe, like we were busy doing other things. When we reassessed it, it was really great. I can attribute to her and our bass player Andy coming in and kind of adding. Andy's been playing with us for almost 3 years now. So just adding this sort of, it felt like what we were already doing live, and kind of just organically like enveloping that back into the tracks, which for me was energizing, where I was like,
Hmm.
wow, it kind of gave some rebirth to some of the ideas. Even some of the simplest little tweaks were really exciting.
To make it clear for everybody, Francesca plays the violin on the tracks. And of course, with her doing this full time, it of course also gives you more space to play the guitar and time for that. At the same time, I had a feeling as if you've never been this close to, for example, Sub Rosa than ever before. There is a very clear, or for me at least, sorry, maybe only for me, it has a certain Sub Rosa feel because of the sometimes two violins, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say there's one more shout out to, I call her Frank. So to Frank, is this group from day one, even when it was kind of the early demos of myself with the acoustic and such, the more stripped down stuff, there's always been elements of violins. I knew that
Mhm.
was baked in from day one. Even the Jarbo collaboration, we've had them. And shout out, you know, everyone that's worked with us up until this point. I can truly say though, with Frank, it feels like we've found like a member, like someone that also can latch in with us as like a part of the group, instead of
Yeah.
just like I am a classically trained player. She kind of lives, but mentally can live between both worlds, and
Mhm.
it's really great.
And I mean, like for me, it sounds very Soprosa-esque, for lack of a better word.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure if that was an influence. Are there specific influences on you and on the band for Ataraxia?
I I mean, there's a million influences, right? But I think the obvious things, instead of necessarily like a particular influence, there was absolutely moments when we started developing. I'd say the lines in the sands felt like we knew the album was going to have. We'll sometimes internally refer to it as like hills, valleys moments. We knew we
Mhm.
wanted those to be more drastic. So small parts, smaller,
Yeah.
larger wall, dense parts,
Yeah.
bigger, right? Um, Absolutely knew that there should be this more orchestral, like cinematic element to it. And I think I know for myself personally, I was watching just a ton of films and notating like moments in picture that I was like, these moments are great. And, because composer territory, I'm very familiar with the ones I like, but it's also such a dense space. There can be, it's so dense. So I was kind of using older films, Bergman stuff, just older films I enjoyed, and waiting for like happy accidents or something where I would be like, oh, this part is beautiful. Like, let's dive in a little here. Yeah, I would say those were kind of the biggest influence was leaning into ideas less than like necessarily pointing out like a specific group or like or an album. Just like we should try to find influence in these outside corners. Felt good.
So now let's talk a little bit more about the process. First off, if I understood it correctly, the record was basically already done up to a certain point. You said 60%. At the time we last spoke.
We started
beginning of 2024.
Started in May, so maybe like 2 months after we had spoke, we went into the studio.
Crazy. And then you said, okay, how did you notice we need to take a step back from this?
It's a great question. I'll try to keep it short. Like
people are used to long monologues on this interview.
Okay, cool.
Don't care.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. It's weird as a human, I'm very slow and meticulous with large decisions. When it comes to art, with hesitation of this sounding like corny or something, I am fairly impulsive. I think I've just learned over time that like if a good idea comes to me or something, it's in my best interest that I record a phone note, do something with it, try to capture as much of that moment that my brain feels hot or inspired. And usually that's like in the morning. 9 times out of 10, it's the mornings. So, these songs were in a good place. I'd say this album has a lot more droney, open-ended moments, and we did that intentionally. And I will say, I feel like I'd already notated in this interview that I learned a lot in the process, and I learned a lot of what I wouldn't do again. Not to say that I'm very pleased with the final product, but what it did feel like is we bottled that fire initially.
Yeah.
And for myself, I let it kind of sit too long, and I almost became like comfortable. I almost couldn't see the forest through the trees or something like that. Like I was happy with what we captured. I knew it wasn't finished, but I also didn't have a North Star necessarily to point to say, this is what we need to do next. And that felt a little like deflating, to be honest.
I can imagine.
So this is like a little process I've done in the past. So I kind of mentally was like, there doesn't need to be a rush to this. Let's like just put the whole thing down for a minute. Put it down. Didn't really listen to it, think about it for maybe 8 months, 9 months. Just kind of put it aside and moved on with living, right? And was like, there's no immediate need to be scrutinizing and like mentally beating myself up over this. And again, it sort of organically found this calm, Ataraxia, found this moment where Frank stepped in, Andy stepped in, we revisited the idea. Huge help from Zach Weeks at God City, Matt and I, our keyboard player, and Johnny, our drummer, all kind of got back in. And it was almost like we stepped away from it for so long that it was moderately exciting again, and definitely was exciting when we included Andy and Frank into the equation.
Yeah.
So we're like, let's readdress these. Yeah, if that
So
went.
those 8 to 9 months that you mentioned, were that months when the band basically lay low, or were those months where you were still working on other stuff?
Yeah, so we're kind of always working on material. So we weren't necessarily laying low. We were like performing and doing
Hmm.
that whole situation. I think when I meant we stepped away from it, we stepped away from some sort of outside pressure of
Hmm.
feeling inclined to, finish something for a
Yeah.
certain day
Yeah.
or to have some sort of timeline. We had a little more grace on ourselves and just were
Yeah.
like, let's like discuss this when it feels energetically correct, because there is no like immediate need to be beating ourselves up mentally over this right now.
I do. What is also very interesting when listening to the tracks, and I did something that I normally don't do. I first listened to it as a whole, and then I listened to one track each day, because that is something that I felt after Nemesis, that it's a great compilation of tracks, but also each track itself needs time and space to visit. And there
Sure.
were certain moments when I felt like this whole thing works as an album, but each song individually also works perfectly. Is that something for you where you say, like, okay, it must be a flow throughout the album, but the songs also need to be
Oh,
strong enough to hold up?
absolutely. Yeah, I guess I didn't touch on this point. When we initially jumped into the studio right after Nemesis, I would say we cut the fat. There were a lot of this stuff. I'd say 50% of it was like live. A lot of my guitars and drums and at sometimes synths were recorded live. The song The Window was completely recorded live, like all of us sitting in a
Mm-hmm.
room. Um, there's no click track to that one. It was I think we got it on the second take. It was just, we wanted it to have this like organic feel. But yeah, we for sure trimmed the fat, and I'm glad that to a listener, it resonated that way. We were pretty, especially me, Matt, and Zach Weeks were pretty hard on like placement of the songs. The first two tracks, which is Obsidian into Nightingale, that actually was recorded as like a 18-minute song or something absurd.
Okay.
And I think we drew a track separator right now. And so now it's
Mhm.
like Obsidian goes directly into Nightingale.
It
Uh,
does.
and I think we were happy with that. But for sure, the track listing played a huge part. Like we scrutinized over that for a while, making sure it felt cohesive.
It's interesting that you were speaking about the drums, for example, because there is that one track on the record, the drum, and that is one moment where I thought, okay, that fits here, but it also stands alone in a way, because it is, for lack of a better word, it's a very tribal and ritualistic kind of drum pattern. It's a very, very, yeah, tribal thing in a way. Um, is that also for you as a songwriter the cool thing of exploring new territories that still fit with your own band?
Yeah, absolutely. And also enormous kudos to our drummer. The
Yes.
irony is that song was an early concept I've had for like the last 3 or 4 years.
Mhm.
Um, and the song is titled The Drum. We actually went in and built an enormous like drum cadence around the middle
Mhm.
section of the
Yeah.
song. Um, but yeah, I could speak for the group and say we love all types of world music, and so whether it comes so like literal, I don't think that's necessarily the case that but I think we're always listening to outside inspiration like that. You know, Dead Can Dance is one of my favorite groups of all time, and they're
Yeah, that is. I think we've already spoken about that. It is audible. I'll also come back to your love for That Can Dance in a moment.
great. Yeah.
I've said it before, and we've already talked about it, and you've given me already one answer. But with this one and with this particular advance in style, you sound even more designated to do a cover record than you've already did on Nemesis. Back then, you said if you could do a song, it would be one from Nico's Desert Shore record, and you spoke about the Falconer. Now, I want you to give me 3 more, so let's make it an EP, not a single one.
Okay, I'll do my best. It's an on the spot moment. I've always wanted to cover Leonard Cohen's Avalanche. I love that song. We got for other.
By the way, you've hardly ever sounded as much as a cross between Cohen and Blixa as you are doing today. There were moments on the Nightingale when I was sitting there and I was like, "Is that a lyric by Blixa that I haven't heard yet?"
That's incredible. Yeah, I would love to have, there's many Leonard Cohen songs. I'm honestly, this is so goofy of me. I'm looking through my phone. I 3, I don't know, that's tough.
While you do that, I'll give you a question connected to it.
Okay, sure.
Do you think that cover songs are meant to be exactly the same, or should they try to show a very different side of it? Of the original?
I think they should absolutely show a different side. I mean, respect, there's some beautiful covers out there that are pretty speaking of Leonard Cohen and covers, I know like Francois Hardy has covered Suzanne, and it's pretty similar, and it's friggin' beautiful. You know what I mean? So if it can be done, that's but I think it's important to like infuse a little bit of I like a cover when you kind of attempt to take the energy, less the key or something, less the exact notes or something. You try to channel a little bit of the whole spirit of the song versus being so literal.
So we now have Nico's Falconer. We have.
I still want to cover that song. So that one, I think that one still goes on the list.
And we got Cohen.
Yeah, maybe.
I would love to hear you do something by Neubauten. I would love to hear you slow down any one of the early Neubauten tracks.
That would be great. We're huge fans, obviously. That would be incredible.
I finally got to see them live this year. Last year.
How was it amazing? Obviously.
It was very eye-opening because I was there in Frankfurt. I was there alone, and there were loads of people around me, and they were always screaming different songs that they wanted to hear. And I was like, they're not going to play any of yours, because they were demanding stuff from the 80s, like the early stuff. And I knew for sure they wouldn't be playing any of that, more or less. They played a lot from the last record, which is a different Neubauten record. And in the sense of it being different, again, it's being typically Neubauten. It was an eye-opener. I mean, like, it was really, really impressive to see those guys get those tracks played to perfection. I mean,
that's incredible. I have an answer for you, and it kind of it's great because you're talking about should a cover be so literal. I'm gonna go with I saw him last year, and it was incredible. Are you familiar with the artist Jandek? So he has a song called Your Turn to Fall. His music is fairly like outsider. I I could sit here and kind of discuss his lore. It would take forever, but he ideally has put out close to 80 full length albums all himself. He's been doing this since the mid 70s. He's fairly
Unknown.
no, yes. Well, a lot of people know him. I actually saw him perform in a cave in upstate New York, called the Widow Jane Mine, or technically it was a mine. Truly a beautiful experience. If you're unfamiliar, give it a listen. I bet take to YouTube for it. But yeah, I would say Your Turn to Fall actually has been one I have thought about for a while because the lyrics are so beautiful and the guitar is so, it's like unhinged acoustic guitar. So I feel like there's a really interesting way to kind of maybe tone it down and use the lyrics in a different way. It'd be great.
For anybody who wants to listen to two very, very different versions from the original, I have two recommendations. Listen to the new Jay Jail album out on Pelagic, and you can also go back to our archive. We talked with him about, he has been covering Help by the Beatles.
Oh,
and
really?
he turns it into a gothic blues song as if you've never heard it before. So that would be one. That was one. And the other one is from old friends of mine back where I come from, Western Germany, a band called Pale. And they covered the Jackson 5, I Want You Back.
Wow.
And they stripped it down to basically only acoustic guitar and the singer, and they took off all the fun elements of the track, and they basically only use the lyrics, and they show how sad the song really is. So that would be my two suggestions. In the press info that we always get for stuff, you are being quoted with, well, it seemed as if we manifested what we had been talking about. My question is, do you believe in something like that? Do you believe as if you can manifest things from thin air into existence?
Absolutely. I'll speak for myself, less for the group, but I'm sure there's listeners. Absolutely a spiritual person. I feel like that increases every day, year to year. So yeah, there's been many moments that, again, to the putting the thing aside and kind of just living and existing, right? And like allowing, I hesitate to use the trope of like time heals all things or like whatever that. I think there's a lot of truth to that, but I wouldn't say
it does. I also believe that. Yes,
I do. I wouldn't say this was necessarily like a healing situation, but I do believe as human beings, like when met with crisis or chaos, it sometimes, or at least personally, has never failed me to attempt to be as present as you can in the moment. And, you know, I use terms sometimes like gratitude checks or like just take a mental stock of, you know, grateful my eyes can see, grateful my mouth can make sound, grateful my ears can hear, you know, some low bar ones to start with. But yeah, absolutely. I believe in manifestation. I believe in the universal calling that's things are larger than us. And if you listen or attempt to hear those things, you can quote unquote tap in a little more than ones who chose to not follow that or something, which is absolutely fine as well.
You also recorded the new record basically not only in two sessions or in two periods of time, but also in two different places. And you speak about the second one, God City, as some kind of like a homely position that you're in. Um, is that something where you say like we underestimated the importance of place?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, I would ride with that. There's a lot to say that, I had a lot. Zach is one of my close friends, and regardless of music, we talk all the time. And there was potentially like a pain point moment where I probably had conveyed to him, we've stepped away from the other thing, but I'm toying with I'm starting to kind of feel some positive outside energy. Like I should probably tap back into it and maybe start revisiting some of this stuff. And he was energized on it. Again, aside from just being a close friend, like he does fantastic work. And I knew we'd be in great hands. Like we feel very comfortable there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say we possibly underestimated, which I think gives it this unique experience, right? Where there's like a little bit of this push pull. At least I can feel it when I listen to it, that it's sort of baked in there. And the irony is like, we discussed being large and having this almost like polar opposite moment of things feeling really small. And whether it was large versus small, maybe it was like chaos versus calm, like is kind of the thing we ended up landing on. And yeah, I guess I'd never thought of it necessarily that we mismanaged place, but that was great.
Also something that you then again learn for the next recordings, right? So
we already have some.
Yeah. And that's perfect, because that leads me to my question that stems basically from, and I want to quote the press release that we got. 2025 will see the release of Ataraxia, which, to make it clear for everybody, when you listen to this on March 2nd, the release will be in 19 days, March 21st. Going back to the quote, 2025 will see the release of Ataraxia, the first LP in a series of new material due this calendar year. So, Cameron, tell us, what's in the pipelines?
We didn't learn from our mistakes and
so you went straight back
into
recording.
Yeah, of course, because you don't learn. We finished another album. Really excited to talk about that one as well. I guess the one piece I would say around it is I feel like Ataraxia might be as far as we pushed the dark.
So you're doing Shiny Happy People.
Yes, exactly.
I don't want to know what Shiny. That would be a song you should cover.
That'd be great, actually. That'd be really interesting.
So you said you come to Europe, so you have a few months to practice that. So when I'm standing in front of a stage,
Yes, for sure. We'll go to a karaoke and I'll pop in and perform that. I love that. We got something cool in the canon that we're really excited about. We captured a lot of it live, which I think even more so kind of rounds out this. It was a very big group collective album. I will say that. There were moments that I did the tried and true of like writing some stuff kind of solo, but instead of doing that, sitting with them, marinating on them, I more or less chalked a bunch of them up real quick.
Yeah.
And ran right to the group and then was like, let's flesh all these out live. So we tried a different process, and I'm fairly happy with where that landed.
that already leads to my question that I wanted to ask. Like when you say like you change the process, do you think that that was also a necessity after the whole duration of this huge, vast, seemingly never-ending process of
Sure.
ataraxia?
Yeah, something had to change. It was either going to be like go back to maybe, yeah, again, like the tried and true structure of how we'd written Nemesis, or it was
Yeah.
going to have to be um, pushing forward into something new and unexplored. And for better or for worse, my brain just said explore more of the unknown versus
Yeah.
go back to safety. And I'm feeling pretty good with that.
Yeah, it's also probably like, okay, we've now done this, and so there's a lot of energy, I guess, to
Yep.
go into uncharted territories. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
probably a very good choice. Um, the two full lengths have now come out on Profound Lore. I'm,
Yes.
I'm not going to ask where the next thing is going to come out, but um, do you feel as if that is like the best home at the moment for the Infinity Ring?
Yeah, absolutely. We love Chris. I love Chris. He's always been like full support of the group.
Mhm.
Um, for a label that tends to mean black metal, obviously they've had some really powerful outsider releases, not always necessarily death metal or something. Like I think we fit in the space there. I would also say his baked in. We obviously, have our own whatever fans or something, but anyone that is introduced to us via the funnel of Profound Lore, I'm always impressed at how accepting and like open minded a lot of those
Mhm.
folks are,
Yep.
and would just say shout out Chris to you know years of hard work. He's a really hardworking individual and a true curator, visionary. He has a great sense, great ear, and just always stoked to work on new material with him. It's great. Chris is great, and actually, small funny moment of all this serendipitous spiritual kind of mentioning when I had emailed him the final album name, which was one of the last pieces. He was on vacation, and Chris, if you're listening, you're gonna have to email me and remind me where you were. He's always on trips. Um, Wherever he was, I let him know it was Ataraxia, and he said, you know, 24 hours or 48 hours later, he said he was somewhere fairly secluded, and there was a maybe more of like a getaway, kind of like a not Airbnb, but some sort of like um, a place to stay, probably like a very moderate, like not a resort, but like some sort of house to stay in called Ataraxia House. And
That's creepy.
he had emailed me, yeah, like within 24 hours of mentioning that, he's like, "This is crazy. I just saw this." Like, talk about the word finding you. Like if that's not a serendipitous moment,
It
it's
is.
pretty awesome.
You're one of a few people that I know that uses that word more often than I do, serendipitous. Uh, and I only do because I like the movie. Um,
Right,
so,
right.
first of all, thanks for all the insight into the new record. But you know how it is. The infamous quickfire round is not going to go away. So,
Oh
let's
gosh.
pop straight into it. You've
All right.
spoken about Lisa Gerard and That Can Dance. And you've also spoken about scores or music. And I'll give you two of her soundtracks.
Okay.
I'm Not Alone versus Gladiator.
Ooh, I'm not alone.
Okay. Speaking about voices and vocalists, I'll first give you Steve Von Till versus Wino or Wino. Wino.
Big fan of Steve's work, so
Mhm.
Steve for sure.
Mhm. And I use that as the opening for two follow-up questions. Which Von Till record or project do you like more? His early self-titled stuff or his more psychedelic Harvest Man stuff?
I've been loving the Harvest Man material. I know it's
Especially
like
the triptychs, right?
when
That's
the
amazing.
newest stuff he's been working on is
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really impressive. Big
yeah.
fan.
And coming back to Wino, I'll give you two of his bands as well. Saint
Okay.
Vitus versus Be Obsessed.
Same Vitus.
Mhm. We know that you love swans.
Big
So
fan.
I thought like, okay, how do I do it? Do I give him two of the older works or do I compare an old and a new one? I chose to give you two couples. Let's go with the older couple. Greed versus Filth.
Built is timeless, but I'm going to go with Greed. It's
Mhm.
a great album. I remember hearing it. I found that album in high school, and it was amazing.
And by the way, for everybody, Mr. Jira is also going to play Roadburn. So if you are there and miss out on that opportunity, shame on you. I'll also give you a couple of newer Swans records. Both
Okay.
amazing, as every Swans record. The Seer versus the Beggar.
The Seer, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Although
And
respect to everything they've been doing with I like Angels of Light. I like the direction of that new album. It's great.
yeah,
Yeah.
and let's go to two vocalists that also have been used to describe your voice pretty often. Cohen, but I'll give you two songs. So Long Marianne versus, and it's interesting that you've already mentioned Francois Hardy, Suzanne.
I'm gonna have to go Suzanne because the story of him first ever performing that song, and he only made it about a minute in and turned around and left the stage, and everyone kind of cheered till he came back out. Like, it's too beautiful,
Yeah,
that song's incredible. So Suzanne for sure.
it's interesting how sometimes musicians can still get walloped up in their own music, right? I think
Of
that's the
course.
beauty of what real music means. And
Right.
last one, but this time I'll give you two records.
Okay, great.
Nick Cave's Murder Ballads versus Push the Sky Away.
Um,
You first say your
People
answer,
are
and
gonna
then
think
I'll
this is
tell you what I expect you to say.
I'm gonna say OG Bad Seeds fans will hate me for that. I'm gonna say Push the Sky Away. Honestly,
Mhm.
I love that album. I love Warren Ellis's tenor guitar playing on all those like Jubilee Street and all those songs.
Mhm.
Like, those songs are incredible. That's a tough one. Murder Ballads is friggin' incredible as well. So
I would have thought you would say Murder Ballads because of the folksiness of the original tales behind it.
yeah, I'm a big fan. Push the Skyway just holds this weird place in my. We talk about this in the group all the time, but it's too long to discuss at the moment. But I hesitate to call that one of his flop albums, but like we talk about flop albums all the time, like where
Yeah.
there's albums you skip over of certain groups. I personally think Push the Skyway is lyrically just fantastic. Murder Ballads is also one of my absolute favorites of all time. There's a lot up there. It's hard. He's one of mine.
Yeah, I
All
will always have to go with Murder Ballads because I even wrote a thesis on it at university. So
time. It's
it's
beautiful.
for me it has to be Murder Ballads.
I'd love to read it.
If I find it somewhere on my old hard drives, I'm going to send it to you.
Incredible. Yeah.
So, Cameron, thanks for all your time. Thanks for the insight into the new record, into the process, which doesn't sound as if it was always fun down the road. And yes, I hope to see you on European stages at the end of the year singing Shiny Happy People. You do know that I will
I
take you
promise.
up on that.
I got you. I know you will. And thank you for having me. Truly, love what you do. Love the podcast. Truly just grateful to be here. Always happy to talk to you. I'm sure we'll do it again, and I hope to see you at the end of the year. That'd be amazing.
We'll do so, my friend.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.